Welcome to the Narrate podcast, where we aim to tell God's story with our lives. We'll be continuing to post the Sunday message each week, but we want to dive a little deeper and offer some content to supplement your life with God, and that's where our Beyond Sunday series comes in. Join Adam and Narrate staff as they provide thoughtful discussions, ideas, and interviews that go beyond the message you'll hear on Sunday.
I've reached that point, which I think is a good sign, where I feel like we've talked about the rotating council far too much. But
sure.
It seemed appropriate, if nothing else, to get on public record. Like,
okay.
We've moved to a rotating council. You've been here. Are you 8 years? Are you in your 8th year? Or are you in your 9th year?
9th.
You're in your
I'm
9th
in my
year.
9th year.
So your 9th year anniversary is Duncan.
It is.
Okay.
Yes.
So as someone who's been on staff for 9 years, what excites you about the fact that we're moving to a rotating council?
That's a good question. I think, obviously, the council up until this point has been a great team, and I think a support to you and to us during transition times. I think, though, so thank you to them, and that's been great. But also, I think there's something that happens when you are, like, we're moving into 15 years now. We're not this startup. And so I think it's wise to just add some systems and processes. And the council right now is great, and there are other great leaders in the church too. So I think it's wise to start to include other voices. And so yeah, I just think it makes sense.
Yeah, then that's good perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, so context, I mean, I don't know, you never know how much history people have listening to this, but, you know, I was at Harvest, where we were planted out of. We were kind of advised to put together a council. We put together a council of, frankly, what we identified as just high-capacity marketplace leader type people, and I agree with you, they have served us really well. And yet, I caught myself, I think it was just yesterday, because today's Tuesday. I was sitting it's so nice to be able to sit on the patio right now.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Having my quiet time on the patio, staring at my bonsai trees yesterday. And I just had to name that for me, it's another source of security where I just have to trust, because historically the council has been such a source of security for me and support, and there's been different seasons. And I have this like trepidation of, can Narrate survive a new council? And I just, for me, had to name, like, well, Lord, I guess this is a great chance to demonstrate that I'm trusting you more than I'm trusting people. Because I think we got here by way of a good process of discernment. As I've said many times, I'm really proud of the council for making this decision, because essentially they've kind of made a decision to take a job away from themselves, the existing council. But also, yeah, I agree with you. It's this trusting that God is with us and will lead us into these new seasons. And once I say that, I'm like, well, the room is full of high-capacity, great leaders.
Yeah.
But there's just a security in familiarity that we now have to trust. What are the questions, because you get questions in a different way than I do, what are the questions that you're hearing directly, indirectly, about this process?
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't heard a ton about it. One is maybe who is on the council right now, and what do they do? Yeah.
Okay. Could you name who's on the council?
I could.
Okay.
Do you want me to name them?
Sure.
If I forget someone, tell me.
Yeah.
Daryl Stordahl, Brian Anderson, Jolynn Poplar, Jody Bilyeu, Greg Ross, Steve Schroeder, Kyle Ball.
I think that's it.
Who am I missing?
There's 8. So I think, looking at your fingers, you've got to 8. I'm the 8th.
Oh, you're the 8th?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. That's 8.
Yeah, and of that group, so Jody, Greg, and Jolynn essentially came on in the last year. So those other 4, I'm guessing the shortest tenure of those other 4 is more than 10 years. Because Kyle Ball, I mean, he came here from Billings. I mean, I still remember vividly sitting in the room with Vern and I think it was the executive pastor at Harvest, where they kind of lined out for us and really were lining out for Kyle. Like, here's how you're going to get the money, and here's how you're going to manage the money. And so Kyle's been there from the very beginning.
Yeah.
I think next in line is Daryl, and I don't think I feel like Daryl's been on for, I would guess, 12 or 13 years.
Wow.
And then Brian and Steve are also, they go way back. So you're for sure talking about 4 people who have been on for 10 years. I would bet money.
Which I think is good. It was clearly doing well that people wanted to stay for so long. So that can be true. And there can also be a system for bringing new people.
Yeah. Well, and I think part of what's changed, this is what I find myself saying to your, like, what do they do is, and to me, part of what causes me to feel comfortable welcoming the rotating council is there's 2 things. One is we've set the culture, and the existing, that OG council was really instrumental in hearing the vision, receiving the vision, and setting the culture for that. But then the other thing that's, I think, changed in a really massive way is the experience, the longevity, the godliness of the staff. So, Doris, I'm guessing, is around 10 years. You're coming up on 9. Lexi's coming up on 7 or 8.
Yeah.
And even Gay's now been here for quite a while. And then you add Leslie, who she's only been here for a year, but she's not 22. She's in her 30s and has lots of experience. And so I'm so grateful and so proud and that we have such a high functioning staff now that, so when people ask me the question of what's the role of the council, I'm like, well, it's changed. Because there was a time, Ales for Trails is the great example, where we talked about it as a staff, but as a management team, would this be wise to do a brew festival? But really the heavy lifting of discernment for that, we rely upon the council to do. Where I think today, we would still, that's the type of thing that would still need to go to the council, but the heavy lifting would be done by the staff. And so that there's even an example of, we didn't vet with the council whether or not we should do Good Friday. We worked that out internally as a pastoral team. In hindsight, I probably should have taken that to them and invited their commentary. But again, it shows how that axis of power has changed a little bit. So it's still a work in progress when we ask, like, what does the council do? Because it's built in to be somewhat intuitive. I mean, the most technical answer is they manage the budget, but they don't even manage the budget. They oversee the financial piece. So they approve the budget that's been created by Doris and the staff. And then, if something catastrophic happened or there was some grand opportunity where it was like, hey, we need to spend $100,000 on this, that would all flow through the council. And that would be from like a legal standpoint as well. And then the way I think about it is they just do a lot of upper level leadership discernment. So it's an opportunity for us as a staff to vet things with people who have big perspective and big leadership skill, but are outside the room of kind of the nitty gritty of all of that. And I think one of the areas where I've been reticent is like when you start talking about theology, that's where churches can get gross really fast. And I'm excited that we're kind of naming, like, the council's job is not theology.
Right.
That's the pastoral team's job. The council's job is really it's really more the business leadership side of things. So it's fair that people are asking that question because it is somewhat intuitive. And we have some bylaw stuff to clean up as well.
That's
but
right.
You've sat in, and one of the other things we're changing is we're going to bring staff into council more often. You've sat in the last 2? 3, 2?
Yeah, 2. Yeah, 2, I think.
What stood out to you from those experiences of being in that room?
Yeah. I guess my thought was, wow, I'm really glad we have these great leaders kind of overseeing the high level thinking and leadership of Narrate. It's a good group of people.
Who care deeply.
Who care deeply, and if the worst case scenario happens, it's a great team to do whatever we would need from them. Mm-hmm. So I love that. Mm-hmm. I appreciate not everyone agrees in that room, mm-hmm. but there's a high level of respect for each other and hashing it out and conversation that I appreciate a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things that this is going to allow us to do is make it even more of a diverse group. So I think that's another, I mean, you know that, but just kind of in the name of naming this for those who are listening is, so the process, maybe we just speak to the process, even though we've published it and talked about it.
Sure.
The process is anybody can nominate someone for council.
And you can nominate more than one someone.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been like, what am I going to do if someone sends me 20 names? But we haven't. The most I've had so far is 3.
Okay.
So we have this window of time open in May where anybody can nominate, and the only person that knows who's being nominated and who's doing the nominating is me.
Yeah, so they just email you.
They just email me.
Is that official? Yep. They email you?
Yep. Okay. I had one person on the phone go like, can I just say that? I was like, I can take this on the phone.
Yeah.
And then once I get that nomination, assuming they qualify, and really that just means assuming they're not staff or the spouse of staff or existing council or the spouse of existing council, I text them and say, hey, you've been nominated, and I send them an application, which, I don't know, is it a 6-page application?
Yeah.
You've glanced at that. Did anything stand out to you about the application?
No, it's kind of what you would expect. Like, how are you involved? What is your experience? So, spiritual habits, all that, all that kind of stuff.
And then that person who's been nominated makes a decision on whether or not they're going to apply, and there's a deadline for that. And then we've put together a nominating team, which will change every year, because the plan is that we'll do this every year. Like every year, so I'm interrupting the flow of thought, but a council term is 3 years. And so that means every year 2 people will rotate off and 2 will rotate on. And so you've really got 3 classes you've got first year, second year, and third year in the room all the time. Anyway, so so then we've created this nomination team that's comprised of 2 staff, 2 existing council, and then just 2 what I would just call narrate at-large people who either aren't interested in council or aren't qualified, which again could be a spouse thing. Could also be that they haven't been here for 2 years, which is this kind of arbitrary value that we've had since the day we planted. And then that committee will sit with everybody who chose to apply. And I'm going to lean in hard, like all of this is super anonymous. So if someone nominates somebody, they can tell them that, but the nomination team's not to tell anybody. I'm working really hard to not tell anyone. I tell my wife, but she's like, what does Elaine Bennett say? She's like a vault. And then the way that the protocol we're following is that committee then has to produce a panel for the council, and the panel has to be at least 1 more than there are open spots. So if there's 2 open spots, there has to be 3 people in that panel. And this is where that committee does have some control, right? Because they could say, and we're really short on women, so we're going to stack the deck a little bit towards women, or we're really short on single parents or whatever. So they get some control over who makes that panel.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, I want to hear your first response to this idea when you first heard it. And then, because then what happens is that panel goes to the council. Everybody in the panel is represented to the council. If the council accepts that panel, then we're literally we'll put names in a hat and draw 2 names if there's 2 open spots. So there's like high discernment and then Old Testament spiritual vetting. What was your first response when you heard of the hat drawing thing?
I laughed because I thought it was a joke.
I actually went rounds with Brad. When I first told Brad Swope, this is how Chris does it, he's like, no way. And I was like, no, this is how he does it.
But I kind of love it because you're right. It's like everyone in the church is like hopefully going and praying about who can I nominate, and that there's just, and then that person has to decide, do they apply, do they not, they have to do that work themselves, and then it goes to that team, and I'm on the team, but I'll get to see that process and that discernment, and then the panel, and then it's like, oh, just throw it in a hat, like, what?
Yeah.
I kind of love it.
Yeah. It's healthy for me because I'm accustomed to the way we used to pick counsel was more or less I would bring names to the council. We would always pray for it for at least a cycle of 1 or 2 meetings. Mm-hmm. But in general, they were trusting me. Mm-hmm. So I had a lot of control, obviously, and not absolute, but I had a lot of influence. So it's been healthy for me to trust the nomination process, and I can really it's just really interesting to see. It
seems like an interesting balance of control, but then in the end it's like totally literally picking out of a hat.
Yeah. When I sat in, so when I went to Atlanta in February, I got to sit in on what they would call a vestry meeting at Christus Church. And this was one where they were drawing counsel for their next council or their next vestry. And Chris had shared with me that they were actually disproportionate on the women's side of things. So they were losing 2 men. They already had more women than men on their vestry. So they were really hoping to replace those 2 men. I don't know if really hoping is overstating it, but there was this awareness of it'd be nice to not replace the 2 men with 2 women. So they put 2 men and 1 woman in the hat. And they drew one of each. So to me, it was, again, this beautiful picture of submission of the way our brains are speaking to us is we'd love to have for it to be 2 more men, and it didn't work out that way. But they also controlled it because it was, they guaranteed that they got at least 1 man.
Yeah.
So which again, let me underline that it's because they already had more women than men on the existing council.
Notice I didn't say anything. I already heard that.
Well, and we're in an interesting situation because, frankly, awkwardly, since Justin left, I'm the only man on staff. So I actually think that. And
there are 2 women on council, but 2 men are stepping off.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm really excited for that committee process, just to see how that goes and what those conversations are like.
Yeah, I think it'll be really interesting. Yeah, like you said, it's a good exercise of we all have to do the work in our quiet times, and there's just a release of control. Like, well, it is what it is.
And hopefully a release of a popularity contest because, and we're just shamelessly stealing this from Trinity, but part of what I love is that, so when someone gets nominated, they know that. If someone chooses to apply, they know that. But from that point forward, the only thing they'll ever know is whether or not they were drawn.
Oh.
So assuming the committee does the work of being hyper guarded with that there's not a popularity contest, but also there's not this campaigning process because frankly, someone may or may not get into that panel that's representative of the council, but they won't necessarily know that.
Right.
So I think I'm hoping that as someone who defaults to being insecure, I guess, I'm hoping that helps everybody in this. You just don't know. You might have not been picked because you were one of the names that didn't get picked. And you might have not been placed in that final panel because we decided we really needed some younger people this time, and so there's just a lot of unknown, and hopefully that helps everybody move forward. I'm kind of wondering, which would be an interesting question for, I guess I'm really the only one that could ask people this. Well, no, if someone nominates someone, then they could. I'm just wondering what that's like for people, because I've had a couple texts today, and I just get these shocked looks, like the emoji of what the heck when I text people and say you've been nominated.
Oh.
I'm wondering what that's, if it's really encouraging. I would hope it'd be really encouraging, but what that's like for people when they find out they've been nominated. The weight, the responsibility, the time commitment.
I don't know. That's a good question. Could you anonymously tell us?
Yeah.
Or would that? Maybe we don't even want to know.
So far it's been this shock. And then what's really weird is in a couple cases, I'll go like, hey, just so you know, you got nominated a second time.
Oh,
which
wow.
has got to start messing with you and the Holy Spirit and what's going on here. The other thing that I've been surprised by is a couple people have confided in me that they want nothing to do with it because they've been on church boards before and it was horrible.
Oof.
And that creates a good challenge for me because I think our culture is the opposite, actually. That's part of why I'm proud of the council, because it's, in some ways, it's like them giving up their small group, which could get misconstrued as it's all about them, but there's a lot of bonding that happens, especially 15 years.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
So I'm proud of the fact that it's not a lot of drama, but I'm hoping that we can keep it that way. So.
Yeah.
Well, anything else that you want to say in that process?
No.
So we're taking nominations for the foreseeable future. We may take them through the end of May. We may cut that off before then. We're not sure. I think we probably just have to leave it through May. But if you know you're going to nominate somebody, do it soon, because otherwise they only have like 12 days to decide and fill out the application.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
All right.
If you'd like to learn more about Narrate Church, find us online at narratechurch.org.
You can also look us up on Facebook or Instagram. Thanks for listening.